All right, we're going to try one more time. Let's see how we go. I said a quick prayer. Um, please let me know if it's lagging. Chris, good to see you, mate. Really nice to see you. Thanks for being here. PM Blela, so good to have you again. Please let me know if it's lagging. Otherwise, still just double tap the screen. Talon, good to see you, mate. Very good to see you. Please double tap the screen though. The more you double tap, the more people TikTok is going to send into this stream, and that's what we want to start with. We just need people in here to listen and to be part of the conversation. The more people are in here, the more people try to get in the chat, and the more conversations we can have. And that's really what I want. I just want people in the conversation hearing ideas that maybe they haven't heard before, or having things explained to them in a way that maybe they haven't thought before, so they can nice, so that hopefully they can start to see their belief system from a different perspective. I think that it's a very important topic. I know that losing the faith of my childhood was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I think as best as I can help it, I really do want to help people recognize that faith doesn't prove anything. Having faith in something doesn't prove that anything is true. Yeah, you can have faith in anything, literally any claim at all. You can say, I have faith that this is all a dream. That doesn't mean that this is all a dream. You can say, I have faith that one day I will grow wings and I will be able to fly. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen one day. So faith doesn't mean anything, and that's really actually quite important. And when I think that people make decisions, or even important decisions that affect those around them as well, doing them on faith is sub-ideal, to say the least. I think is far from recommended, as far as I'm concerned. Lordy Dory says, no lag. Woo! Yes, sick. Awesome. If it's working, I'm stoked. I really hope that it does work. I won't be on for too long today. It can only be a shortish one, but because I had like a spare moment, I really did want to take advantage of it, Let me say to just fix this lighting up. I think it's a bit janky. Whoa, how's that? Oh my goodness, I turned the whole thing off. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, cool. Goofed Up says it's way better now too. Awesome. Logical Fallacy. You beautiful human. It's good to have you here, mate. All right, awesome. Rotten Viscera says, you rock. Wow, so kind of you, mate. You rock. It takes a rocker to know one, Thank you so much for your kind words. Anyone at all? It's all clear now? Amazing. Excellent. I'd love for anyone who wants to discuss this with me to jump in the chat requests. I do have a guitar. Yes, I'm not playing it right now. I want to focus in at the moment. PM Blela asks, Dan, what is your zodiac? My zodiac sign is Sagittarius. I was born on the 19th of December. I'm a Sag. I'm a little Saggy boy. For whatever that means, I appreciate that there are probably people in the community who subscribe to astrology. I personally don't. I believe that astrology is pseudoscientific. I think that any resemblance between the predictions made in someone's horoscope and what someone recognizes in their own day-to-day life can be explained by several psychological phenomena that are repeatable and cross-culturally. So I don't think that astrology is I don't think it's a viable framework for making worthwhile predictions or assessments of anyone or anything personally. Um, but I understand that there are potentially people in here who do. I know that when I really was on the way out of my religion when I was a bit younger, I did spend a little bit of time looking into horoscopes and that kind of thing. Uh, I now look back in gratitude that it was not. I didn't spend long looking into it. I realized pretty quickly that it was more or less the same. It was taking advantage of more or less the same cognitive biases that a religion takes advantage of, and so I can't subscribe to anything like that. PM says astrology is just fun. Yeah, cool. If you, I feel the same way. I really don't. I really don't think that anyone should take it seriously. If you if you're just having a laugh with it, then yeah, sweet. If you're allowing it to dictate or even really influence your decision making in any way, I would advise that you look into things like the placebo effect and the Barnum effect and uh, apophenia, confirmation bias, the cluster illusion. So all of these psychological phenomena and logical fallacies that astrology takes advantage of. Um, yeah, I think that if you do think astrology is legit, I really recommend that you think twice. I really do recommend that you learn a little bit more about how the brain works and how easily tricked the brain is. Uh, Someone has asked me to learn from Muslims. Youthly 8050 says, "Learn from Muslims, bro." Thanks for your advice. I have read the Quran a little. I have to say I'm not in the least bit convinced that Islam is either correct or ethical. I really don't. I discourage subscription to Islam. M. Jarmus says, or asks rather, "Are you an atheist?" Yes, I am an atheist. I'm not a Gnostic atheist though. I don't claim to know that there is no God or gods, but I'm not convinced that there is one. I'm open to the evidence of anything. I'll consider the evidence of anything, but I also can't help it if poor evidence doesn't convince me of anything. So if anyone in here thinks that they've got what it would take to prove to me that the God that they believe in is real, I want to hear it. I really do. I want to probably paraphrase. I might be getting it right, but to probably paraphrase Matt Dillahunty, I want to believe as many true things as possible and disbelieve as many false things as possible. That's what I want. So if people have got evidence that they think, Nils, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Amazing. I can, yeah. Hey, look, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Before we get into any conversation here, I really do try to just impress my gratitude upon the guests. I don't see that there is any afterlife after this one. I'm not convinced at all, meaning that this time right here is the most valuable commodity that anyone will ever have. So thank you for sharing that with us. Having said that, though, do you believe in a
God, I feel
God?
like there's a lot of
And if
pressure
so,
now.
why? Yeah, I really do think that you could feel that way. I think we should feel that way a little more personally.
Uh, oh no, I meant like like it was just such a like a beautiful, grandiose opening, and I was just like, dang, this feels like a lot for a TikTok live. Usually, people are a lot more like,
Well, I take this
sorry, yeah,
seriously. I
I'm
really
just
do.
taken aback. You're just so, I'm not in a bad way, in a good way. It just that was very soothing.
Oh, good. If there's anything therapeutic going on here, well, that can only be a good thing. Hey, I really do mean it though. I think this is a really important topic because it affects people's livelihoods, it affects people's lives in ways that people often don't realize. So I feel really passionate about this. But yeah, do you
Yeah,
believe in a God?
genuine is the word I'm looking for. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk conversations on God. Sorry, I kept interrupting you.
No, that's all right. No stress.
Uh, yeah, I was just a little curious about your thoughts on deism because personally,
Sure.
and this is like maybe like a tautological definition, but like I believe in a God
Okay.
because I tautologically define him or her or it or whatever you want to call it. I just use him because because I used to be raised Muslim, so I'm used to referring to the
Mm,
God as like a male
mm.
gender, even or not male gender, like masculine gender.
Masculine.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but even though there's no reason
Yeah,
to,
sure.
but um yeah, I
There's
usually
no
think
need
of
to.
him
Yeah.
as yeah. I just think of him as like the beginning of the universe and that's it, or like the
Okay.
beginning of creation or existence or reality, whatever that pertains to. Um,
Sure.
and then that's all I really claim. And then I kind of use that as to fill in what I believe is like the spiritual slot that all humans kind of have. And the reason I do that is because I'm schizophrenic, and the dangers are if I don't have something that fills in that spiritual slot, my hallucinations can usually creep in and fill it for me, and then I can start believing in things that don't really make sense because it's kind of like a
Gotcha.
protection against worse religions, if that makes sense. And I don't want to say like worse, but like worse for me because I have schizophrenia, so I can't really believe in them all. Otherwise, I have trouble differentiating between hallucination and reality.
Yes, exactly. I think that I think that I'll start with this. I've had schizophrenics on here, or I don't like to say it that way. I've had people with schizophrenia, I should say, on here before, um, and they have not been anywhere near as self-aware or reasonable as you apparently are right now. So I'm really glad for you that you've reached a point where you can process your experience so efficiently. I think that like that's fantastic for you. And I can't imagine
Yeah.
what it must be like to live with that,
You should see
you
me when
know?
I'm off the meds.
Got you. Yeah, right. Well, look, I mean, I can imagine, can't I? That's all I can really do. And I really do hope that, the rest of your life, dealing with this condition that, you're never going to be able to get rid of entirely. You can only ever manage. But I really do hope that the rest of your life can, go as smoothly as it possibly can, man. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I just
Of course,
was
man.
thought it was interesting because it was just like I was just curious about your like because you said you were like an atheist and stuff like that, and I was just curious of your
Yeah,
thoughts on that sort of
on
belief
deism.
system because
Yeah.
like in the sense of an idea of like not just
Mm.
deism but sort of like a shield of deism
Yes.
against other religions such that
Yeah.
I may not succumb to epistemological what I believe is epistemological poison.
Yes. Right. And I think that that's not a bad technique to use. I think that it could probably be improved upon, in my opinion, by simply uh, looking more into something like skepticism, you know, or even atheism, to be honest, because deism is also just as unprovable as theism, right?
Oh yeah, that's why I would say I'm agnostic on it. But
Yeah, good. Yeah,
just
cool.
but having the agnostic stance I think is still like I think this might sound weird, but I think people are happier with a little bit of absurdity in their life. And sometimes
Potentially.
taking a claim that isn't falsifiable, like, I don't know, Bigfoot is real or something, that doesn't
Mm.
hurt anyone, sometimes is like good or is
I d
like,
Sorry.
that's like a weird thing to say, but sorry. Yeah. Oh,
No,
but you
that's
can
all right.
talk.
I think the only thing that I would personally, I am somewhat of an absurdist, in the sense that by definition, I don't recognize that there's any meaning or purpose provided to us by the universe or reality. However, I do also observe that everyone seeks meaning and purpose. And it's in that seeking out of meaning and purpose whilst being met with nothing in return. That's what absurdism is by definition, right? And so I would say that I am somewhat an absurdist. I love Camus, big fan of Camus. Um, More or less, coined the term. Um, I think that absurdism is worth studying. I think that it can be a pretty helpful philosophy, a pretty helpful framework to know a little bit about, to be honest, because it helps you deal with the absurdity of existence. Because it's just a bit mind-bending when you really get down to the nitty-gritty of it, right? Um, I think that what I probably disagree with you most on is when you say that sometimes beliefs, even if they're a bit absurd, they don't necessarily hurt anyone. And whilst I would agree with anyone saying that they don't necessarily hurt anyone, I'd say that it's just not true, in my opinion, that they don't cause harm. And by that, I mean someone who holds a belief just because it kind of gives them a bit of comfort or something, um, it's still going to affect the decisions that they make, right? It's still going to affect the way that they live their life day to day. And that always affects other people. Like imagine that you are a parent, perhaps, and you adopt some absurd belief just for the heck of it to make your life a little bit more interesting or whatever, right? If you act in accordance with that absurd belief and treat it as though it's accurate and true, you could potentially really harm your child, right? And the same can be said, if you're in a partnership with someone, you could potentially really hurt your partner. Or, depending on exactly what the nature of this absurd belief might be, you could potentially really hurt other people in your community if you vote a particular way in accordance with this absurd belief. Take someone like if you take someone like Soren Kierkegaard, for example, right? So one of the, he's often touted as being the father of modern existentialism, which I still think is, I mean, I don't know if I wholly agree with that. Um, but he kind of claimed that, even though there's no proof of any kind of inherent meaning in existence or anything like this, you're still better off putting faith in something like Christianity. Just take the leap and behave as though it's true. Um, I disagree with that. I think that's a bad idea because taking a leap of faith and just kind of basically LARPing as a religious person, other people are going to see that a particular way. If you're wandering around telling people that you're a Christian, you're validating Christianity, right? And I don't think that we should do that. Jesus was pro-slavery. Yahweh is a genocidal and infanticidal and sexist, misogynistic
Okay.
maniac.
Like, I'm
So,
against all religion, but I think we can carve
right,
out a specific subsection, like I said, beliefs like Bigfoot or like the Loch Ness Monster, or like maybe that there might be aliens, and a more agnostic belief in these, where one has the, like, for example, I knew people who were agnostic and they're still alive. I just don't talk to them anymore. Not like
sure,
the crystals did anything to them, but they were crystal people and they
sure,
were like,
yeah,
yeah, I know this is like probably not true, but it makes me feel
yeah.
better and I'm not going to
It's a
force it onto
placebo.
anyone. Yeah, it's placebo. And
Yeah.
they kind of acknowledge that. And I'm like, I wonder if there's like a rational level of irrationality where you can say this isn't proved, but I believe it because it isn't disproved, and it makes me feel better to believe it even though it's not proved or disproved. It's kind of indeterminate.
I think that there's probably way more people out there who you know, at least religious in like a nominal sense, who probably recognize that their religion is more or less that as well. And I still think I get where you're coming from. I really do, because I can see that. I mean, we know that the placebo effect can have profound impacts on
Oh yeah, it's
someone's
really
health and
strong, yeah.
well-being.
Even the
You know?
nocebo, like when people get
Yeah,
vaccines and
exactly.
they think that they're like their arm is about to fall off, and then the doctor's like, "Yeah, half that's in your
Yes.
mind." Like,
Yeah, exactly. You know, and
yeah.
I fully recognize the potential um to do even something that's potentially good for someone else by manipulating them using the placebo effect. I still think that ethically, I prefer to educate people about reality rather than have them wandering around under some kind of illusion. That's just my personal take. I think that it's better. I think that it's more empowering anyway to educate rather than indoctrinate in some way or pretend or manipulate, even if you have like um, good intentions behind it and that kind of thing. I think it's just better to educate and help
Well, I
people
think of it.
deal
Oh,
with the
sorry.
harshness of reality, personally.
I kind of think of it like this way, and it's like maybe this is a grim outlook or like a weird outlook, but I think of it like think of religion like a recreational drug. Like some people have a good and
Ooh.
healthy relationship with it, where they're like, "Hey, I can have it every once in a while, or like I can like indulge in it a bit, but I'm never gonna go. I'm always gonna return from my trip. I'm always gonna make sure that I'm in reality, and I'm gonna make sure I'm always in a safe place and not hurting anyone when I'm practicing it, right? And stuff like that. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, if you're thinking about religion in that very secular way, and you're just kind of like using it as like, for example, I'll use
Like an
Islam because I used
experiment
to be a
almost.
Muslim. Yeah,
Sure.
like I used to be Muslim, but like there are like a lot of good practices in it that I think are like, and I don't mean like the necessarily the scripture. I mean more specifically stuff like
Oh
praying
no,
5 times a day is yeah, listen, I read the I don't know how a lot of these Muslims can defend the Quran. I read it and I was like, this is kind of
man.
yikesy.
It's bonkers, man. Like the defending. I mean, but this is the problem. It's not to go too off track either, but just while we're on the topic, I think it's really worth bringing up. Like, this is what indoctrination does. You can indoctrinate someone into defending the most horrific ideology, and that doesn't mean that this person is a bad person either. It just means they've been indoctrinated, right? I don't think religious people are stupid. I think that, I mean, this perhaps a little I'll say thought provokingly, what the statistics demonstrate is that the higher the degree of education achieved, the less likely someone is to engage in religious practice. Now, people can take that and interpret it how they will, but I really don't think that religious people are stupid. Think about, the most dangerous cult that you've ever heard of. And there's a few out there. These cults still contained doctors and lawyers, educated people, physicists. But the thing is, if you understand psychology well enough, you can take advantage of the cognitive bias that every brain falls prey to effectively enough that you can indoctrinate anyone. It takes honestly a bit of an antisocial personality and an understanding of psychology, and you can manipulate people into believing all kinds of stuff. Um, but sorry, to go back to what you were saying, sometimes people do use
Actually,
religion
I
as
kind of want to
a
add
bit
one
of
more
a
point to that, what you
experimental
just
thing.
said.
Sure,
Because
sure.
the psychology thing is so important. I wish more
So
people
important.
had to take a psychology class because holy
Yes,
crap, when you learn how crap your brain is programmed and how terrible the
yes,
hardware and software is, you're like,
yes,
oh my God, how do I
yes.
believe, how's any of this working? Like, I'm looking at things
Yeah.
and half of my vision is basically made up by my brain.
Oh, yeah. Like probably more than half, right? Like if you really
Yeah.
take into account the
I'm
amount of
just trying to be
information
like
going
safe
in.
because I don't remember the percentage,
Yeah, no, no, I
and it
totally
varies
respect
from
that.
person to person.
That's right. Yeah. When you take in the amount of information that is, entering your brain via your optic nerves in bits or whatever, versus how much it has the capacity to actually process from moment to moment. I mean, our brain is just in constant cope mode, like we're just trying to keep up with reality constantly. We're terrible at figuring out what is, you know, likely and unlikely and accurate and inaccurate without, you know, smarter people than us teaching us how to figure things out, right? Like, I agree with you. I think psychology is one of the most important things that I've ever learned anything about. I think it should be compulsory, personally. I think things like philosophy, psychology, I think there should be compulsory subjects in every school. That's what I think.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the psychology thing would have helped me as like a kid realize I was schizophrenic because like I was hallucinating from a
Mm,
long time. Like my brain has been weird for a long while, and it's like, dang, wish I had some background knowledge when I was younger to
yeah.
identify this to like adults because that would have been very useful.
Yes.
It's the same thing with how not to push other political stuff here, but like they should teach kids more. Well, they call it stranger danger, but like technically you're more likely to get hurt by not a stranger, but I just remember it as
Yes.
stranger danger. So like that kind of program and
Mm,
stuff like that. But like the equivalent would be for like mental illness, like, hey, if you have
yes.
these symptoms, then like talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
But
And I think it is difficult too, isn't it? Because you also don't want to trigger anything or suggest anything that wouldn't otherwise have been there. But again, I don't think the research supports that that's likely to happen anyway. Hey, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that personally. I agree with you to the extent that we should be teaching children about psychological phenomena much earlier. I agree with that. Hey, you don't have to go into this either. This is entirely your business. Um,
oh no,
but I am
ask away if this
fascinated
is
by
about.
the brain. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You probably know where I'm going. But I am
Yeah, no,
fascinated
everyone goes
by
there. And
the
I'm
human
like,
brain.
listen, fire away. Everyone's curious.
Okay, cool, cool. I really appreciate that, and please don't feel as though you have to tell us
No,
anything
listen, you
either.
don't gotta
Um,
worry about it. I'm an open book. As long as you're not asking me like personal information that'll dox me,
sure.
because there's some crazy
Yeah,
people
sure.
online. Like as long as I'm
Couple,
safe,
yeah.
I'm chilling. I'll answer it.
Okay, amazing. I love this. Um, when did you? Well, so I'll rephrase what I was about to say. When you look back, what do you think were the earliest hallucinations that you experienced?
Okay, when I was really young, and I didn't. Here's the thing. In retrospect, I could coin them as hallucinations. But when I was younger, I
Mm,
thought I just had an overactive imagination
right, right.
because I would see things. Whenever my vision was like, I would always like not even when I was like my vision was bad, but I always had like sleep paralysis when I was younger. So I'd
Yeah, me
often
too.
wake up
Me too.
and see things, and then eventually this kind of like crept into morning things where I would start to like see things in the morning and it kind of I remember like one
Okay.
of crap there's like this is really funny. One of my earliest hallucinations that I remember was like the moon I think it was like moon cakes like the mascot his head looks like a giant like crescent moon and I saw like a little
Okay.
goblin with a crescent moon head, and it closed a closet, and it confused me as a kid.
Wow.
And
That's fascinating.
and the
Hey.
thing is, it looked like it closed the closet to me, like very slightly, because hallucinations can't actually interact with the real world. This is one of the ways that like I
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
differentiate between them. Um,
Mm.
but
Right,
yeah,
right.
that's like,
Yeah, and that
but like
you've now
basically,
learned is a good kind of like method of discerning. Right.
yeah, as much as I love talking about like, hey, we should embrace the absurd, um, I do have a strict law of empiricism when it comes to my like real life, because otherwise I can't really, all right, strictly adhere to
Mm.
empiricism in real life, because otherwise I can't really like deal with hallucinations, because otherwise it's like, hey, if I'm not looking at it through a purely empirical, like scientific view, then I can fall victim to
Yes.
being like, hey, this hallucination is real because it does, even though it doesn't follow any laws of physics or like any sort of consistent rules, it has to be real or something. But like,
Right.
that's why I have that claim of deism where I have a god that's like consistent in my brain. Because if it's not
Got you.
consistent, then um, like it's a protection against inconsistent gods in that sense.
Got you.
Sorry, that was kind
So
of long-winded and kind of random for the answer. I just woke up.
no, no. Hey, no, not at all. That's your answer to that question is just as valid as that's your answer. That's totally valid, mate. Um,
Oh, no, 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 I
what
know, but I was
this is
trying to get like a specific answer to you because I think like you're trying like I don't know what you're exactly probing for, but I assume people usually want some sort of like understanding of a certain topic, and usually I try to give it to them, and that might be just because like I used to tutor kids, because so for some
oh
reason
sure,
people thought my
got
schizophrenic
you.
ass was good at math, which surprisingly was, but that's probably because of the luck.
And maybe people have, that what's that movie with Russell Crowe? Hey, thank you so much. A Beautiful Mind. Maybe they see that movie and they think they're all schizophrenics. They're like math geniuses or something. Um, the I think what I wanted to ask was because you are so lucid and rational, which is not I can't say that about the other schizophrenic people who have come up here before. Um, I feel like this is just such a golden opportunity. How do you feel that your schizophrenia interacted with your Islamic faith?
Oh God, that okay. This it's actually I'm kind of lucky. It's kind of what caused my deconstruction really, really early, because
Right.
this was
Okay.
really funny. When I was younger, one I had too much access to the internet because my parents were often working because we were poor back then. So I had to entertain myself and so listen, if you give a kid internet access, they'll learn way
Mm,
too much. But also, along with that,
mm,
it was like, what was I gonna say? I learned a lot about like Islam, and I like watched a lot of shows and stuff like that. That was mainly what I did on the internet, just like watch anime and stuff. And one thing that I started to
mm.
notice was that the
Sure.
rule sets for stuff like anime seem to coincide with the rule sets for things like religion. And same thing with video games and their
How
mythology. They
so?
all had like common kind of threads and stuff like that. And that might have been because I was like more pattern seeking, because basically what schizophrenia is your brain finds pattern and intent in things that may not have it, because your brain is always looking for pattern and intent.
Like
It's just
apophenia.
when you're schizophrenic. Pardon?
So
Oh,
like
sorry, I just didn't hear what
apophenia,
you said.
basically, and pareidolia
What's
and stuff like that.
what's apophenia and pareidolia? I'm not familiar with those terms.
Oh, sure, sure. So it's apophenia is the tendency to recognize significance in patterns where there is no actual significance. Uh, and this can happen in numerology. It can happen, when you look at the stars or you look at the clouds in the sky and you see faces or shapes or whatever,
Yeah. Okay, I
um,
need to memorize
or
that word because
sequences of
that's the
numbers.
perfect word to describe like
Yes.
one aspect of schizophrenia.
Yeah, right, exactly. And this is like I said earlier, I find psychology fascinating. I've spent that many hours of my own time researching this stuff. And pareidolia is the tendency for the human brain, at least one with the functioning prefrontal cortex anyway. It's the tendency of the human brain to perceive faces in your surroundings, even though you notice how you might
Yes.
look at the headlights and the grill on a car, and it looks like a smiley face.
And it looks like a little smiley.
Or yeah, or you might look at your toast got burned, and it looks like Jesus Christ or something. You know?
Exactly. The
Like that's
classic Jesus
pareidolia.
toast.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of those things
That's
because
yeah,
my I think my psych has actually used those terms. I just don't
right.
because I was like, these sound familiar, but okay. But yeah, thank you for
Fascinating
enlightening me.
stuff.
Because
Oh,
that's
you're
actually
welcome.
really useful to because that if you have a grasp of that, that's actually really easy to understand schizophrenia then. Because basically, if you take
Yes,
those aspects of the human brain, where your brain is pattern seeking and trying to figure things out and trying to find out what's real,
yes,
um, by just like connecting, or filling in the gap of a preconceived pattern, like XXY, XXY, oh, must be XXY again, right? Even though it
yeah,
might be like WZ as Z or whatever. And that pattern finishing sometimes extrapolates too far, right? Where you might say, okay,
yes.
XXY, XXY, maybe the next is XXY. Your brain might go, maybe the next 70 are XXY. And
Mm.
then it'll keep going with that to dangerous extents where you'll extrapolate on
Wow,
an idea to um,
the nth
the
degree.
point it becomes kind of a hallucination. And it's weird because
Mm.
one of the things I notice is when I'm having a schizophrenic episode, it feels very similar to like divine, what people describe as divine revelation.
Yes, I've heard
And
this
that's
too.
one
I
of the
think I
things.
think the
Oh,
statistic
yes.
I saw was something along the lines of out of all the people with schizophrenia who are ever treated or diagnosed or surveyed, something like uh, 1 in 3 of them is under the impression that they have direct uh, access to a deity, and of that third, almost I think it's another third of those believe that they are a deity. So like the the likelihood that a schizophrenic person is religious is really high. Like schizophrenic people are
Yeah.
mm, way more often than not religious or superstitious as well.
Yeah.
And it's totally
I'm lucky.
understandable, right? It's totally understandable.
Okay. I'm just lucky that my parents were like they took because they think their religion's right, and they honestly think their religion's right in a
Mm,
way that they're like, I don't need to push my religion,
yeah,
I just
right.
need to be a good person, and then people will come to me, and they've converted a lot of people this way, where they've just been like nice to people, and then they'll come up to them and be like, why are you nice? And they'll
Yeah,
be like, well, because Islam, and I'm like, I don't think that's true exactly. Like you're not giving yourself enough credit.
yeah,
But that's how they would convert people. And so they didn't
yeah.
push religion on me as fiercely when I
But
was
then
younger.
at the same time, hmm,
Oh, sorry. I was just, but like they still did. Like they're still like, you should
I
read the Quran, you should do
no, no,
this. But they're
sorry.
always like, oh, remember, question yourself first, question things always, make sure you're always curious, try and figure
Hmm,
things out, etc., etc. Like think for yourself. And so,
hmm,
unlucky for them, I thought for myself too much and I didn't believe what
yeah.
they believed. Especially because I
Well,
think I
this
talked
is the
about.
thing, isn't it?
Oh, sorry. No, no,
Oh
you go.
no,
There's a bit
that's
of a
all right. I
delay.
was only going to say I do. Yeah, there might be. I don't think my connection's perfect. But I do wonder and I'm not going to pretend to know anything about your parents other than what you've suggested. But I do wonder with people like this who are kind of like, just kind of nice and approachable and friendly, and that they then have a lot of success in bringing people to their faith. Um, I do wonder whether their niceness is actually that sincere and whether they really can thank themselves for, like, whether they really should give themselves that much credit. And again, I'm not trying to say anything about your parents specifically. This is just a thought that I've had
Oh
for a
no, no,
long
no
time.
offense taken. I like understand the
Because,
philosophical, abstract kind of overview.
yeah, right. Because I do think that, especially in the case of an Abrahamic religion like Christianity or Islam or Judaism, that it's simply not true that these people who are being nice have no reason to be. Like, at the very least, they're doing it because they want the reward of heaven, right? But I mean, I really do think that for the vast majority of them, they're far more profoundly motivated by their fear of punishment, the fear of hell or Jahannam in Islam, right? Like I think that that fear underlies a lot more of their surface level niceness. You know what I mean? And so it's like it's this motivated niceness. It's not necessarily this inherent niceness. It's this niceness that comes because it's performative. It's ultimately a performative version of, empathy or friendliness or niceness because they're basically trying to impress their God. They're scared to step out of line. I feel as
Mm.
though, and again, I'm not going to pretend to know where your parents are with that. That's up to them to know. But when I was a child, that was really big for me. People used to tell me that I was such a nice guy all the time. And I really do try my best still now in my adulthood to be empathetic and friendly and approachable and non-judgmental. But my motivation for being that way now is completely different. Now I'm like that because I just know that I really appreciate when people are like that to me. So I want to be that for other people, right? It's more based in empathy and reason. I want to connect. I want to have intimacy with people. Whereas when I was a child, a lot of the niceness that people praised me for and kind of knew me for, a lot of it was
Was very
performative.
like hollow
Because,
and just like on the surface
yeah,
because all you wanted to do was get into heaven.
that's right. And I don't think that that's really an authentic niceness, personally. I don't think that that's as legitimate of a version of niceness as the niceness that comes from actually just recognizing that our communities are a better place when we're all nice to each other, and that's good
Mhm.
enough reason to
But
be
I
nice.
I
What do
think
you think about
religion
that?
does because I think that religion actually does something kind of tricky here, which I think is actually a good thing and it's smart, but when you do something for long enough, it doesn't matter your intentions, it becomes a part of you. If you're nice for long enough, eventually, by habit, you will just be nice. Just because it becomes your nature in a sense
I've
once it's practiced enough. And I wonder if
I've
religion
wondered this too.
is that like trick to get people to be nice long enough that it eventually they're just like, of course I have to be nice. It's my like duty, right? Because that's what it feels like happened to my parents, where it was like originally like my
Mm.
because apparently my parents tell me, like my dad at least tells me this. Apparently he was a little shit when he was younger, right? And then he like mellowed out and he
Sure.
like started to get like he started to be like more chill. He was like, okay, maybe I'll like go to mosque more, maybe I'll like do whatever more, maybe I'll like start going to school more, like stop being such a little brat. And
Mm.
and it like part of like religion was part of that, right? And I wonder if it was like, hey, it
Mm.
just gave him a rule book, like do
Mm.
this, do it enough times, and you'll eventually like get some sort of stability in your life. And
Right.
that's what like it granted him through just like repetition of like good actions. Well, not to say that all
Yes.
religious actions are
Conditioning,
good, but
basically,
like
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I would say like generally, at
Mm.
least for the times, like I like to think that like for our times, I think religions are barbaric. But for their times, they were pretty good,
Mm.
actually. You know, like they're treating people better than
They were an
like it's usually
improvement.
yeah, it's an
Yeah.
improvement.
They were
It's
an
just not
improvement,
like the
yeah, at
best.
the time.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. I agree. And I recognize this about religion too, I'm not one of these atheists who you hear saying, religion is entirely evil and this and this. I think that religion is simply a phenomenon of humanity. It's something, it arises all over the place, you know. They're all different and there's often commonality between them as well. They're mechanisms by which humans approach reality. The
And to add on to
frameworks,
that, actually,
yeah,
I wonder if that like there's like a core because this is how I describe mental illness actually because I have a couple like as well as
sure,
schizophrenia I have general anxiety and
sure.
depression which interact in a fun way if you might imagine but uh
Mm.
The point is, all of these illnesses are just like you take a normal aspect of a human and you crank it up way too high or
That's
way
right.
too
Just
low.
dial it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like you have a perfect understanding of that, where it's like, hey, all these things are
Mm.
actually innately human. Like, I feel like, and I don't know if this is true or not, the same thing that makes me schizophrenic is the same kind of like wiring or underlying process that is like happening when people feel like they're having divine revelation.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You know, if someone legitimately feels as though they've experienced something divine or supernatural, you know, I totally believe that it's entirely, I mean, depending on the exact experience that they report, because it could simply be that it was a perfectly natural phenomenon that they just misinterpreted. Um, but you know, if someone really does claim to have seen Jesus or an angel or you know whatever, yeah, man. I mean, come on. You can take hallucinogenic drugs and see all kinds of stuff that we don't have any reason to believe actually exists in the real physical world. Um, and those experiences can be just as visceral to the person experiencing them as you know this reality is to you and I. And ultimately, what we know now, thankfully, thanks to modern neuroscience at least, is it's all ultimately just neurochemistry, right? You introduce this compound or that compound, or you dial up how much of this one there is, or you dial down this much. You know, like you're saying before, you can you can tweak someone's internal experience to such a degree that you can make them believe all kinds of stuff, right? Like, and then you think
It's
about
kind
how
of
you don't
scary
even
how the
have
brain is
to.
basically a physical soul.
Well, personally, I don't believe in souls, but when you use that
Oh
word,
yeah,
what
but
do
I
you
mean like
mean
the
exactly?
concept of the soul, like the soul
Oh,
containing all of
sure.
your like emotions and personality, and like your very like the essence of your being is kind of in your neurology,
Yeah,
right? And
that's
your
right. Exactly.
hormones.
You are. I put this is in my bio, right? Like if anyone clicks on my my profile picture and you see my bio, like I really do just believe that I am a mind being generated by a brain that's piloting a human body around, you know, that's all that we can prove. We have no proof of like a soul that leaves the body when we die or that can travel around if you learn how to astrally project or whatever. Like, there's no evidence of any of that. Well, no proof, rather.
Yeah.
You know, but what we
I have
do
a
know is
weird
that your
spiritual
brain
definition of. Oh, sorry.
generates. Oh, no, I was only going to say, you know, what we do know is that your brain generates this phenomenon that we call a mind. And that is what every one of us is. We're a mind being generated by a brain, piloting a Homo sapien around this rock that's just hurtling through space, right?
I just find it really interesting because it's like parallels between like when people talk about soul or like souls a lot, and when I like read about how they describe the soul, oftentimes because I this is just me as a kid, I like whipped out a biology textbook at the same time because my sister was going
Mm.
through biology classes and I would like to steal her stuff, so
Yes.
I would just take the textbook and be like, ah, I'm reading it now. And
Yes.
funny enough, I was reading about
Oh
like a
God, that's funny.
soul and stuff in like, or learning about like a soul and stuff at like the same time. And I was learning about the brain in her biology textbook. And I was like
Yeah.
really convinced when I was younger that the soul is actually physical and the soul is the brain.
Right. It's
And
an
that
interesting
made me
take,
really
hey?
terrified of Alzheimer's because then I thought, oh my God, Alzheimer's is a soul eating disorder.
Man, that would have been a pretty terrifying belief to have arrived at as a young kid, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I learned a little bit about the brain when I was younger too. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it sounds like you and I are quite similar. I was just a total nerd, like just wanted to learn as much as I could about anything, you know, a lot of time on the internet, a lot of time reading textbooks, you know. I feel like
Mhm.
maybe we're the same in that way. Um, and I remember as a child when I learned about how, you know, the mind operates and how experience is generated through, the interpretation of sensory information, I remember realizing that what I'm most afraid of is losing my mind. You know, that's, I think, what I fear the most is something like Alzheimer's or dementia. You know what I mean?
Or a
Maybe you
really
feel
bad
similarly, but
schizophrenic episode.
honestly, yeah, you
Yeah.
know, and
Like that. I know what you mean because I've been there. I've had some like schizophrenia has done some really negative things in my life. Like it's done some positive stuff, but like because I didn't
mm,
know I had it, and then I took a like what basically ended up happening was I didn't know I had it. I was on
mm,
some new medication that was psychotropic because it was for something else because I was diagnosed with something else.
okay,
And then I was like, you know what if I try to get a little more religious or spiritual? And then I went into a
sure,
very long trip of just like
yeah,
psychotic insanity where I was just like really paranoid and really like, and I was like, wow, religion is not for schizophrenic people. At least not like mainstream
oh
religion because it holds too
no,
many contradictory beliefs that poisons your epistemological framework such that you can't actually discern between reality and hallucination. It's actually really sad. It actually made me
yeah,
sad to realize that because I was like, I tested it on myself basically, and I was like,
yes,
oh man, like, like modern day religion is actually poison to these people, and it makes me feel so bad because I'm
yeah,
like, I want there to be because it feels like spirituality is inherent to humans, especially because like,
mm,
listen, some of these hallucinations are a good time, okay?
I bet,
They're chill. They're like you.
yeah,
In fact, they're debatably useful because sometimes I would hear voices, and these voices would give me advice, and these advices would actually be like good sometimes. I mean, sometimes they'd be bad, but
mm,
essentially there'd always be a dialogue in my head
mm,
that wasn't necessarily mine. But like sometimes I could like hear
mm,
voices in the dialogue, and I could like pick up, and it would like help me think, and it would help me process ideas. And
mm,
I don't know. I wonder if there's like a part of that that's missing because like that's
mm.
like missing from like the human experience if you take away religion, and it's like, oh, but how do you have it in like a safe way? And that's why I kind of, sorry, this is like a long-winded way
Mm.
to explain how I came to the deism thing, where it was just like, hey, being an
All right.
atheist is a little risky because then you have the you have the temptation of religion because of all of the things that it comes with it, right? um Because like there's a
Oh
lot of
yes,
nice
yes,
stuff that
yes.
comes with religion, right? I think.
Well, I think that when I look back on my childhood, yeah, there were loads of things that, at least at the moment, I felt as though benefited me for sure. Like the sense that, but it was always tainted by this fear, this underlying fear. To be fair, you know, like when I was younger, if I was ever scared, like when I was younger, I was scared of the dark, right? Like most kids. But believing, at least at the time, that all I really had to do to hold any kind of, you know, entity or demon or anything that might be out to get me in the dark, all I really had to do to protect myself from it was just pray. I could ask Jesus to come and protect me from all the demons and whatever, and then I'd be able to go to sleep. You know,
You
it's a
know, I find
placebo.
this
It's a
funny,
total
but
placebo.
because I think I mentioned the anime thing when I was younger because this is the thing that helped me
Mm,
realize that God was probably not real. Because in my head, I was
mm.
like, anime rules are simple to Koran rules. And so if God is real, then anime must be real. So I should pray to God and
Oof.
anime to keep me safe.
Oh my
And that was my
goodness.
logic as a kid.
So you were like that kid in that meme. The kid, have you seen that kid? Who's
Which
like,
there's a lot of kids and a lot of memes.
oh, there's this one kid. I think the kids filming it are actually picking on the kid. Like as an adult, I look back at this and I'm like, oh, this
Oh,
is a bit
I have
cruel. I
God
really don't.
and anime on my side. Yeah,
Yes.
basically. Yeah. it was actually kind of cringe. I was very
Oh,
cringe as a
buddy.
little kid. I was like I
Hey,
would oh my
you
God.
can't help it, man. You
Yeah, you
can't
can't
help
help.
this
Listen,
stuff, you
all
know,
kids are
though. Like,
cringe.
oh, every one of them. Like, I'm a high school
Yeah.
teacher, right? And the
Oh, you
just the
probably get the
number
brunt of
of,
it.
oh, dude, the number of things that I just wish that I could tell the kids to just not do, just on the basis of the fact that they're just embarrassing themselves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, please don't say that, or like, please don't do that. Like, you look like such a, a fool right now. Like, you're killing me. We were all like that, you know. You can't hold it against yourself. But I think that it is interesting to me that you feel as though deism, to kind of circle back to the topic a bit. I've remembered that I didn't quite get to go as far down that road as I wanted to. It's interesting to me that you feel as though deism is like the most effective method that you've come across so far, at least, at helping you, I guess, what, remain comfortable with reality or
Yeah.
whatever. Because I think that because deism is just as unprovable as atheism, as theism is, why not just say that you're an agnostic atheist? Because an agnostic atheist is simply someone who lacks the belief in any of these gods, but also recognizes that you can't have certainty. So, like, to me, I do wonder, like, what's the, do you now, given the conversation that we've had, and this, you might not have changed your opinion, but do you now think that perhaps it might be wiser to really perceive the world through the lens of an agnostic atheist rather than a deist?
Thing is, I used to do that, but it feels somewhat
Okay,
missing or hollow, and that's my whole problem with it. It's
okay.
like I honestly like think that humans are built to believe in some sort of god. Like like from my understanding, it
So you
feels
think
like
there's a
there's
creator that
always
made us?
not necessarily that made us, just like there's probably like I don't like going that far because I think that invokes some sort of divine properties onto it.
Well,
But like or do you mean like something created the universe? Because I would believe that if something made the universe, especially in a more morbid way, in the sense that I think that
hmm.
something sacrificed itself to make the universe, if it did, because we don't see any trace of it. And
Why do you?
because it's kind of it's very much poetic and personable, but I think these like weird poetic, weird ways of
Okay.
thinking are kind of I don't want to say healthy in a way, but like I, I I feel like I'm just advocating for a healthy amount of delusion. Like you could have a little delusion, just a bit, as a treat. But like, uh, the
Sure. Okay. I've got to be honest, man. I've really enjoyed this conversation. You've been one of the more engaging guests I've had on in a while. I really do appreciate it. I think I think uh I think I appreciate where you're coming from because I think that I have been there, I think. You know, I think that for a while, particularly after I was really I really started deconstructing what Christianity really was because I was raised Christian. Um, I did view the world deistically for a while, you know, like the case that there might be a God of some kind, but it's just, you know, we can't detect it in any way. And that's just part of the mystery that it has decided it wants us to have to deal with and whatever. Um, but I think personally, I just got to a point where I decided I'm just not going to jump to conclusions about anything. You know, like if I don't have sufficient evidence to support the likelihood of something being true, I'm just not going to behave as though it's true. And personally, I have found that my day-to-day experience has dramatically improved. I feel so much less uh, subject to other people's nonsense, to be honest. Like I find it so much easier to just kind of dismiss clear, like obviously ridiculous things. And I think learning a little bit of like formal logic as well has really helped me to um, feel a lot more empowered actually about making the right decision about this or that, and a lot more, a lot surer in how it is that I go about spending my time. You know, there's not like this constant. I think what's also interesting is that I have never been so comfortable saying I don't know about something, right? Like I've never felt as comfortable as I do now because I'm so much more comfortable not knowing things for sure, right? Like for example, I don't know for sure that Santa Claus isn't real. You know, there's a tiny chance that it's real. I don't act as though Santa is real, but because I'm agnostic about everything now, I don't have to pretend that I'm certain about some things, you know? I don't have to pretend
Oh
like
yeah,
I'm
like
certain that, you know, that this political party is better than that one or something. I can simply go, look, honestly, I'm not convinced either way. I see serious flaws in both positions, and I think that this ambiguity and this comfort with not knowing things with certainty, um, it feels honestly like quite empowering. And I think that when I was kind of entertaining a bit more of a deistic worldview, I didn't feel as good as I do now because there's always this kind of like looming entity that I just have no idea what they want from me or what their intentions of me are or anything. But now I recognize that there's no good reason to even believe that they exist. And so any anxiety that came from that worldview, that doesn't exist now either. I've just become a lot more comfortable with not having certainty about things. And you know, you might not recognize any value in that either, but I wonder how you feel after me saying those things.
thing is, I think we might have come because this is where we might differ. Because I've always been healthy and like happy with don't
Okay.
know because how I was raised was, hey, not knowing is fine. What I've never been have like, and
Mm,
I think there's a healthy amount of this is taking leaps of faith. That's something I would like never do. I would always,
mm,
and it kind of got worse as I got older because I you can always.
mm,
This is one thing that like my mom would tell me, and I never believed her, but like she's always right about it. It's and so would my sister, but like you can always reason
mm,
yourself out of something, so you need to take that leap before you just like over reason yourself, right? And part of the
mm,
deism has helped me taking those leaps of faith has kind of made me more like, hey, let's hold the brakes more, think about this more on an emotional level, and just like go with the feeling because when I think of deism and I think of there
oh, okay.
being some sort of higher entity there, even if it may not exist anymore, even if it may be dead or it may not be watching over us, the fact that at least like something made us, at least I don't know, something like feels filled and like complete in that sense. And then I'm like, I've taken this leap of faith, and it makes me more comfortable to take other leaps of faith but then I guess you're right because then there's a worry that that might be an epistemological poison because certain leaps
Yeah,
can cause destruction on the foundation, right? Like of your belief
I think
and your
so. Yes,
understanding of the world. Oh, but it's I don't
I
know.
think so.
But it's hard to give up because it's like I've
Yeah.
constructed it in such a specific because like okay, this is what I think everyone should do. I think everyone should have their own. This is gonna sound crazy. I think everyone should have their own mythology story for how the universe started, and have it fit science as much as they can. And then when science reveals something new, you switch your mythology story such that it fits more. And so everyone has a little bit of a story on how the universe works, and it gives them a bit of meaning to life. And that's what I kind of do
To
with
be.
deism, where I'm like, here is my story for
Oh,
God.
okay.
He is like I imagine him as like a programmer, who like or not a programmer, more so I imagine him as like a sacrificial being because that's what a lot of people seem to do with like Christ and other figures. Um, and I think of him as like, okay, he probably sacrificed himself to create the universe because one, imagine a being by itself, knowing everything, being everything, and being conscious of everything. That sounds like the most boring thing. A thing that is everything just sounds boring as hell. And so he must have programmed the universe or created it or etched it into the coding of reality by sacrificing himself in some way. And that kind of idea kind of makes me want to take care of myself more, for example, because it's like, hey, it's not just my body, it's the body of the universe. It's something I have to take care of
Honestly,
because to a certain extent it's not just me who owns it, it's the property of what once was.
honestly, this sounds a little bit like non-dualism. Like, do you know what non-dualism is?
Nope, educate me. I
Sure. So
suck at
it's, I mean, this is,
terminology.
uh, this is just like something that I nerd out about anyway. So non-dualism is kind of foundational to Hinduism, right? And a couple of other worldviews and philosophies and religions too. But it's basically the notion that separation of any kind, in any way, but that separation is purely illusory. It's just imagined. But reality, the reality of the situation we find ourselves in, is that we are all actually just one entity. The universe and anything outside of it that we can't observe, it's all just one thing. And it's experiencing itself through conscious beings, or what we refer to as conscious beings, right? So, like, it's kind of like saying we are the universe experiencing itself, you know? So,
Mhm.
you and I are the same entity. It's just that we observe whatever this is from different points in space time. Like I live in Australia, you live in, it sounds like you're in the US. Um,
Canada, actually.
Correct me if I'm Canada. Sorry, I can never pick. I'm so sorry. I know the accents are different. I can just never pick it. I do apologize.
Doesn't matter. Canada's basically America light, but we're better.
No sugar, just more stevia instead. Um, I think that what you're describing sounds a little bit to me like I get that you're still a deist, and you believe that this entity might be separate from our universe and from us. And by definition, then what you're saying is that you're not a non-dualist. But I do wonder if non-dualism resonates with you at all.
It kind of does, but I think like my only problem is when people are like, "Oh, it's all the same thing," and it's like maybe it once was all the same thing, but to call it all the same thing now feels like it just feels like an error in language. You know what I mean? Like when we say things
Perhaps.
are different, it's usually because we're drawing some sort of difference in characteristics. And once something has a difference in characteristics, it's effectively a different thing. Because from what it sounds like to me is like if you remove all characteristics, everything is the same. And I'm like, yes, because you've removed all characteristics. So it is, of course, the
Yeah,
same. And I get that,
it's
that you
something
could
you
create
can
this
only really.
ethereal, yeah.
It's just an
And
abstract.
I
It's just an abstract reality at this point. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like, okay, now you have
it's like a
abstractonium.
philosophical nothingness.
Yeah, but like,
Abstractonium.
I
What
don't know
is
what
what's this?
I'm just calling it abstractonium because it's like a catch-all term for
Oh,
this
like
like
like an element.
general.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I just like
Gotcha.
calling it
Yeah.
that because it's there's like an abstract idea of like, oh, this might exist in this abstract sense, and people use this to defend
Mm.
God a lot, especially I feel like a lot of Muslims on here will be like, oh well, they'll use like the Coulomb's cosmological argument and like run back to the
Mm.
like and eventually basically create abstractonium where it's like, hey, you've basically said that there's an entity that is an abstract force that might do things, right? So I just call it
Which
abstractonium.
is almost entirely. yeah, it's almost an entirely useless concept, right? Like it's just yeah. You get because I mean, you could come up with like an infinite number of concepts, like
Yeah,
the list of
abstractonium comes in many
metaphysical
shapes and forms.
objects, an infinite number, and it becomes a bit kind of meaningless at that point, doesn't it? Like it's just,
Mhm.
I mean, unless what someone likes to do is sit around thinking about the next abstract concept that they can imagine, but you know, whatever.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, you'll find a few
I
rock
think
collectors
that,
every once in a while.
yeah, exactly. You know, look, I think something interesting that you have brought up each time that I've kind of circled back to deism to kind of press on the idea a little bit. You've brought up purpose and meaning each time. Personally, I don't see that the universe provides us with any like given or objective meaning or purpose or anything. I think that purpose and meaning, honestly, is a construction. I think we construct it for ourselves. And I think that's fine. Personally, I think that's okay. Do you think that purpose has to be given to us by some kind of entity? Do you feel as though you wouldn't be able to find comfort without there being this notion of some kind of entity external to you that you derive your purpose from?
See, I have a weird, so this is like, I have a weird, because this kind of comes back to purpose and stuff and meaning again, because my belief in deism, as you might have figured out, is completely pragmatic, right? Like it's all to keep me safe from like
Hmm.
more dangerous beliefs and all that stuff. So
Right.
when it comes
Right.
to, hey, wait, sorry, could you just restate your question a little bit again? My brain just blanked. I'm so sorry. It happens
No,
sometimes.
that's okay. I guess as simply put as I can remember it anyway, is that do you feel as though you would be able to cope, I guess, or
Oh,
engage
if my
with
purpose wasn't
reality
given by an external
and
entity,
live
yes.
if you,
Um,
yeah, okay, okay, sure.
yeah. And
So
the
it's not
reason I
like you pretend. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's not like I pretend because it's like, oh, I need it from an external entity. It's that because I'm like I okay, I think there's a religion for everyone. And that's why I say everyone should tailor their own mythology to themselves and kind of believe in a little bit of absurdism because it gives you a purpose and meaning, and that purpose and meaning doesn't have to be given by anyone, right? Technically, you're giving it to yourself. You're just giving it a bit of a story and a bit of poetic pizzazz to it, right? Um and maybe like some spiritualism
Right.
to it. And I think there's a healthy way you can do that and build these kind of beliefs such that they give you purpose without taking away kind of the value, like without having it necessarily, like you kind of still have to find your own purpose in this way, right? There's
Right.
no
Right.
getting
Right.
away
Yeah.
from that. You still are finding your own purpose through constructing your own mythology or idea of how the world was created, right? Not like
I
world.
think.
By world I mean like universe. Like by universe I
Yeah.
mean
Got you.
reality.
Yeah, and you know, like nature in its
Yeah.
broadest sense. Yeah. Someone in the comment section has raised like a fairly valid question. I think I do want to ask it. Do you think that this absurdism is necessary?
I don't want to say it's necessary for all people, but I would generally prescribe it to most people, like a healthy level of absurdity. Because I think there's some people who like can go their entire lives without it because they're just like, hey, I have a goal, I have this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna blah blah, I don't care. They're just like built to do something from the get go. But I don't know if everyone's built that way, right? I would say the vast majority of people need some sort of purpose or some sort of drive or some sort of like story to motivate them, right? Or like I call it like a divine story. Everyone needs a divine story to kind of guide them, and or not. And by everyone, of course, I don't mean everyone. Everyone, I mean like a lot of people. And so creating this divine story for yourself sounds just a lot more healthier to me than adopting the divine story from how someone else tells you. Especially because it seems more
Okay.
open-minded and less like I don't want to be like you're less of a sheep, but like I mean, what
Wow.
if God's real? I don't think anyone is gonna be like. I don't think someone's gonna just like tell you and then you're gonna know. I think like he's gonna tell you himself, and at that point you gotta like take it in. Like it's just weird that like I don't think you're ever gonna get revelation from another human. You have to just find him yourself and think about him yourself and kind of like meditate on him or whatever.
And then even then, you can never know whether it's legitimate revelation or not, can you? Because it could always be hallucination of some kind, right? And this is
Yeah,
the this
and
is
that's what I
the
also
ultimate issue.
Yeah, but that's why I also add in a caveat of what I call divine humility. I don't know. That's the thing. You have to be humble and say, I don't know. And I think this is another thing that it actually builds is this like, hey, if you have this framework and you accept that this framework isn't necessarily true and that it actually, instead of being epistemological poison, it kind of acts as an epistemological vaccine or an inoculation toward your ideas, where now you have like, hey, you have a God claim. I have a God claim. Now we can fight our God claims against each other, and it's a different conversation. In fact, a lot of times it's easier conversation for people because they're like, I can't imagine God doing that because that doesn't sound all good. That doesn't sound all blah, blah, blah. Or maybe you don't imagine him as all good and you say, I don't think God's all good. So I don't think that makes sense. And it's like
Hmm.
a vaccine against crazy religion which may lead you into, I don't know, Christian Science or whatever, or like Jehovah's Witnesses. I think
I think it's
are Jehovah's
difficult.
Witnesses the one that's a cult? I think it's Jehovah's
Oh, look,
Witnesses.
they all, if you, in my opinion, they all start as cults, and then once the charismatic leader at the center of the movement dies, if that movement persists, then it becomes classified as a religion. But I think that I think what I really want to ask is, do you when you say that you've kind of adopted this worldview or this framework or this narrative, perhaps, just to clarify, because I think maybe I'm not quite clear on it yet. Do you believe that it's true, or do you honestly just think that it's a framework that helps you?
It's hard to separate the two because, like I said before, with a good person, a good person can be forged by practicing good things. Someone who believes can be forged by pretending to believe. And I feel like what's happened so far is, and I'm in the process of this in a sense, I'm kind of indoctrinating myself, where I'm like, just kind of working through day to day and kind of just like nodding to it, saying words towards it, and just being like, hey, kind of acting like there is one. And I'm starting to get to the point where I like feel like, hey, maybe there is some sort of thing out there, or maybe there is such a thing as a soul in a sense, in the sense that information. And I take it in a very weird way that like I define a soul. So we can get into that if you want, but that's a weird definition I have. But like once again, building your own mythology, and it's like as I follow it and as I kind of like go through the steps of my own kind of, I guess, like pseudo religion, I'll start to believe it more and more just because I'm going through the steps.
Hmm.
So I don't fully
And
believe it
and
yet,
in that,
I guess, but like I don't have like an intuitive like this is real, but like I don't think I even ever want that necessarily because I think I like the separation of like I believe this, but there's always like right? Like there's always that like skepticism. And I think that's also like healthier, right? When it comes to like believing in a god.
I believe so. Absolutely, yes, yes. I don't think that we should. I think what my I think my take on this ultimately boils down to is that I don't think that we should behave as though things we can't prove are real are real. I think that's what it boils down to for me, you know. I think that
Hmm.
it's wiser to withhold belief uh, when it comes to claims that we cannot substantiate and that going with the evidence that we do have, uh, that's the wisest thing to do, and to learn to be comfortable acknowledging that there are things you don't have an answer to, and that it's okay to not have an answer to something, even if the question that you really want an answer to is a big question that you're not necessarily comfortable not having an answer to, right? Like, for example, I know that when I was younger, I was really uncomfortable with the notion of not really knowing exactly what's going to happen after I die, right? Like, do I have some kind of spirit or soul or something that will go somewhere and continue to experience something? Um, will that experience be eternal? Will it be painful and of the nature of suffering, or will it be, blissful and just pure enjoyment, or will it be kind of just this again? Will it be reincarnated or something? Like not knowing what it is going to happen after I die used to freak me out a bit, right? It's uncomfortable not knowing. Whereas now I'm just entirely comfortable having no certainty whatsoever. Um, but the evidence that we do have supports a notion that uh, I'm very comfortable with, and it's more or less this. I think it's probably going to feel like what it felt like before I was born, and I have no recollection of what that was like. Right? It's more or less like going to sleep but having no dream. Right? I mean, that's what I think is most likely to happen. You know, like I said earlier,
Thing is,
we're a
I'm scared to
mind
make claims.
generated by a
Oh,
brain.
oh,
And
sorry. Yeah,
and
you're gonna
again,
go
I'm
through
not
that.
I'm not I'm not saying that this is definitely what's going to happen. I'm just saying that regardless of how exciting or boring someone might think that position is, um, I think that's just most likely. I can prefer. Someone might come to you and go, yeah, but like, wouldn't you love it if it were just kind of like, you know, everything was made, it was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Everything was made out of candy and, just everyone was naked, like it was just a constant orgy and everyone was on like,
I don't remember this part
like,
of Willy Wonka.
I'm just talking like uh,
No, I know, I know. I'm
pure
just joking.
hedonism. You know what I mean? Like, there's just free. Everyone's on heroin and MDMA all the time, and like everyone's just having a blast. It's just pure dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin forever. I'd still say to that person, yeah, but we don't have evidence that that's likely, though. So why would I pretend or act like that's what's going to happen? You know what I mean? Like, you could say something like, "Wouldn't you like it to be like this, though?" It doesn't really it doesn't really have any effect on me anymore. I simply go with what the evidence points to, and I can't help it that that's how I am now. I just really can't help it. So for me, the fact that I think it's most likely that dying will probably feel like going to sleep and not dreaming. It's just something that I have had to come to grips with. And now I honestly am actually just really comfortable with. And honestly, I think it makes my life way better than it ever was before. Because now I think that this is all the time that I'm ever going to get. Like this incredible experience that I have found myself in the middle of here. Like I was born as a Homo sapien, the most like, in so many ways, the most incredible species that we have any that we've got any knowledge of. Like there's some incredible animals out there, but I really do think that the human animal, the Homo sapien, is like just fascinating, at an individual level and also at a community
Like
level,
if you take like
like
a
collectively.
structural, like societal level, because it's like really fascinating how they organize themselves into
Yeah,
power, their power structures and patterns and all that stuff. Like, hey,
right.
why did they organize this way? Why do we think this is okay. Why do we have the concept of
Exactly.
race when there's no biological tie? And it's like all these like
Exactly.
interesting like or like why is it legal in like most states to basically child abuse under religious context, basically?
Yes,
Which
exactly.
in
Like, we're
specific
so
I'm talking about those laws where it's like if you deny your child health care that would have saved them for religious reason, that's okay,
mm.
basically. And
Or
that's
even the
like a
notion
law
that
on like
you
oh
can
sorry.
cut parts off of your children's genitals if it's within your religion. You know what I mean? Like it's just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating, right? Like humans are so fascinating. And to experience whatever this reality is from the point of view or the perspective of a human, which is what I get to do until I die. Like this is so much more valuable if it's finite, right? It's so much more valuable if it's limited. If there's some kind of infinite experience after this, that's what's going on right here. Like this is all just kind of like intermediary experience. It's just kind of like this is just a waiting room. And all the evidence in support of any particular religious claim is just so terrible that you'd have to either be, in my opinion, a little misinformed, misguided to believe any one of them is definitely true, or you'd have to pretend and act like it. And I don't really like pretending or acting like I believe something that I don't. And and I think that coming to terms with, that discomfort of not knowing for sure what it is that's going to happen after I die, but also realizing that I've probably not got anything to fear because I'll probably just fade out back
Yeah.
into
But part
whatever
of me
state it
is
was that I was in before I existed. Um,
I
I
think
don't think there's
this is
anything
where
to
we
fear
differ a
there.
lot. Yeah, I think this is where we
Okay.
differ a lot because I think like I like have lived and I've like existed and I've been like looking through the atheistic worldview and I'm like that's
Mm,
fine, but I think because like generally atheism doesn't have super strong communities where I am, right? Um, most people are
okay.
religious, uh, so I don't. So it never really gave me a sense of like purpose or community or anything like that. But when I start to talk about God or deism, I can start talking to like Hindus or whatever, or I can talk to like Christians
Right.
about their God and our ideas of God, and it brings a sense of community that also exists. Like I just feel like there's like
Yes.
I've just personally experienced so many benefits from deism that like I think that's where it changed. Oh my god, it's the personal experience argument.
Sure.
Oh my god, run from it, hide from it.
That's
It's always
that's right.
personal
Yeah.
experience.
That's exactly right. And 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 I get that you laugh about it because, like, I got to a point too where I was like, oh shit, I'm actually just like justifying things to myself for the sake of my own comfort. And then I think a while ago now, I really do think, and this is not all I think adulthood is, but I got to a point a while ago now where I think that adulthood really can, at least in my definition anyway, and other people can have their own definition, but I really do think that a pretty good working model of adulthood is simply the state of valuing truth over comfort, right? If you get to a point in your life, or at least this is what I've found anyway, is that when I got to a point where I decided, okay, I'm going to value truth over comfort, no matter what, I found that just something something ticked over in me, and I just felt so much more adult than I ever had up until that point. And I found that these beliefs and these approaches that I used to take and these, I guess, narratives that I used to entertain and et cetera, when I kind of switched over, like, okay, I'm just going to value truth over comfort from now on. All of that stuff just kind of fell away, and I just all of a sudden felt so much clearer. You know, I no longer have to pretend that this is likely to be true, or I no longer have to behave like this might be the case, or I should do this or that. It's simply if there's not sufficient evidence to support something being true, I don't have to entertain it. I can talk about it and I can look at it as an interesting phenomenon and I can observe it, empirically and scientifically, but I don't have to be basically subject to my own ever-changing emotional state. I don't have to be subject to always seeking out whatever is going to just basically confirmation bias. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, I would call
it's
it
the
copium
it's the red
instead. I
pill
think that's a
in the
more accurate
Matrix.
term.
Yeah,
Or
perhaps.
the
Yeah,
blue
like it's
pill, I
it's
say.
I just
The red
refuse.
pill is like truth, and then
I
the blue pill
refused.
is like, hey, do you wanna just like keep sleeping?
Yeah, I refuse to take the blue pill. You know what I mean? Even if taking the
Yeah.
red pill means that I'm going to have to face some uncomfortable realities, I would rather that. You know what I mean? And I think that, yeah, I think that if I were to go back to you saying something along the lines of your deism, or at least acting as though deism is true, has given you a sense of connection and community and intimacy with people around you. Um, I guess my question to that would be, because I'm concerned with truth at least, um, do you think that something giving you a sense of connection or community means that something is true?
I don't think so, but I think that's because we value
Yeah,
truth differently. Because I think,
perhaps.
I don't know, like I'm always like I love knowledge and I love learning about things, and I think there's certain I think with my like the set of deistic beliefs I have, they don't contradict the fact that they don't say anything untruthful, but they don't say anything truthful. They just say a there might be claim. And that's basically nothing and
Be
meaningless. But because
right.
it's nothing and meaningless, I can use that meaningless thing and have fun with it. It's kind of like art. Art, like paintings. What do paintings mean? Nothing. They're just bits of dye and
Oh,
rock on like a piece of dead tree, really, right? Like that's what it is. But given there's certain shapes and certain configuration, you can get some sort of meaning from it, right? Oh, sorry, were you like cutting out or something?
yeah, right. I think. Oh, you sounded like an alien robot there for a moment, but you're back. It's all good. Um, I think. I think perhaps you and I have a different relationship with agnosticism, by the sounds of it, right? Like my agnosticism uh, leads me to steering clear of claims that are unlikely to be true. Whereas it sounds to me as if, and please correct me if I'm misrepresenting your position, but it sounds to me as if you almost play with your agnosticism and you allow yourself to veer towards a particular unprovable claim because it serves you, you find utility in it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to put it.
Sure, sure. I can understand that. I think that's pretty understandable, And look, to me, you don't come across to me as though you're the kind of person who would use that framework that you allow yourself to entertain to dictate
To like hate on
whether or
people.
not you think that, yeah, whether you think that,
Yeah, like
homosexual people should be
I
allowed to
don't
get
I find
married.
it crazy that when
Or,
religious people are like, "Ah, yes, my God said that this entire group of people are evil because they like it." Like I was about
yeah,
to
right,
say
right.
what they like, but I don't know if that's TOS.
Oh, I don't know either. Yeah, no. I don't know what's TOS at this point either. Um, but yeah, okay, cool. So we're essentially our differences boil down to how we engage with our agnosticism,
Mhm.
our
But I
leanings,
do
basically, right?
Yeah, I really do like it's really
Mm.
interesting hearing your position though, because I feel like it feels like given a
Mm.
crossroad, I was given a crossroads at some point, and instead of going down your path, I took down another, and that led to like I assume like seemingly like we'll have a lot of the same conclusions. Like assume generally we'll have like, oh, the government should be secular, and like we should probably not outlaw like
Yes.
I don't know abortion because it's like a medical procedure. Um, at least like leave it up to the doctors
Yes.
and patients. Because small government
Absolutely.
base.
Yes. Yes. I agree with everything that you just said then. Yeah. We're
Yeah,
probably, politically speaking, we've probably got a lot in common by the sounds of things, at least, you know.
yeah. Which is,
Hey,
to be
look,
honest,
man,
all
this
that
is,
really matters. Like if we're
look,
aligned politically or
kind of,
not, right?
right? In a strange sense, I'm coming to realize that a bit more and more as I get older. Um, dude, this has been such a great conversation. I really have loved this. Um, I like the time where I am right now. It's quite late. I could, if I had more time up my sleeve, I would probably stay on here for like another hour just chatting with you. But I kind of have to wrap this up, to be honest.
Oh no, that's fine.
And I
Like,
feel
hey, listen, if you got stuff to
I kind
do,
of don't
life
what,
comes first.
yeah, I kind of don't
Also,
want
God,
to,
this
but
delay, I
I
keep
really,
interrupting you by accident.
no, 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 please don't stress, man. I really don't want to, but I really should for my own well-being, to be honest. But I gotta say, man, thank you so much. I really do mean it. You know, this has been lovely. It's been a really good conversation. I mean it when I say that because a lot of recently, I've just had a lot of people who wanted to come in here and just like hurl abuse, that like just coming in real hot. You know what I mean? And I'm just not really that interested in that. I just so much prefer to actually like observe our beliefs from a distance and just figure out what we actually think is reasonable and that kind of thing. And this has been really nice. I feel like we've gotten to do that. So thanks so much, man.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me on and like challenging my beliefs because I think that's like a really important thing. I think what happens a lot
Yeah.
nowadays is we try and get rid of all the friction between us, and I think having some friction, having some argument, having some discussion and disagreement on topics is actually really really good because without that friction, you're
Yeah.
never going to actually stress test whether an idea is good or not. And that's why I like to come and like ask about my deism is like I want to stress test it and see like, hey, when push comes to shove, is this gonna break? Because I don't want this to break in a freaking stressful situation, because that'll be bad. So I gotta make sure it's solid in like a training ground, if that makes sense.
I think also the notion that like, and obviously, I can't, I'm not going to claim that this is, I'm just going to say what I'm going to say and you can take it or leave it. Um, I
Okay.
think also if it got to a point where you feel as though your deism did break and you no longer could entertain the notion of it because you just maybe you found that it was no longer satisfactory, like you or whatever. Um, I'd still love to think that you would still be okay,
Well,
and
I'd probably be okay
that you
eventually. It would just
definitely
take a bit of time.
sure, sure. Well, look, honestly, you're always welcome here, man. You're totally welcome here. Anyone is, but you especially,
Okay, thank you so
no matter
much. I
what,
heard of
no
you
matter
from
what happens.
I think I followed you for a bit because I saw you were having a conversation. I was like, oh, I should follow this guy from the future. And funny enough, someone, I think it's like you might know him, like Chaotic Dad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great
Yeah,
guy,
that guy.
really good guy.
He's really, yeah, he's really cool. He mentioned you, and I was like, apparently you like are really chill about like deconstructing and like talking about belief. And I was like, okay, if there's a safe place to test my stupid idea, this is it, if any. And I was like,
Man,
dang, he
that's
is like
it.
a really nice
Absolutely,
guy. So based.
straight up. Yeah, no, and
And by he, I mean
um,
you. So I just talk in weird ways.
oh, so, no,
I
no,
mean,
that's
so is
cool.
Chaotic
I,
Dad.
I appreciate
You're
it.
both nice.
Yeah, oh, look, we're trying out here, I think something that I really do want people to recognize is that atheism does not necessitate aggression or uh, condescension or narcissism. I mean, there's a bit of a stereotype, you know what I mean? Like, there's a bit of a
Mhm.
stereotype that people get in their minds when they think of an atheist. And
Yeah, the
I just, I,
2014
I don't
internet
think,
atheist.
yeah, pretty much, right? Like the classic Reddit atheist. And I just don't think that that really applies to just about any of the atheists that I know. Um, and I think it's worth just just representing, like I'm just concerned with people's welfare. And I think that religious belief is not geared towards people's welfare ultimately. I think that in many cases it acts like a placebo, and that can be short-term benefit, and sometimes it can serve people their entire life. But I really do, I really do think that religious belief is most worth challenging because it both affects the believer and the people that have to. Thanks so much. And the people that have to deal with the consequences of that believer's actions. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's really important to challenge it and to also just represent atheism a little bit more realistically. And I think that for a lot of people on this app as well, who debate from the position of religion, there are lots of people who do a similar thing to this, and it's like, Jesus is God, or the Quran is all true, or
I
atheists
like
are
to do
idiots
how
or
do you know
whatever.
God is actually all good and not secretly like deceiving you or like evil or whatever.
Right, because there's no way to know, right? But there's a lot of religious people who go about it nicely, and I fully respect that. But I think that there's a lot of religious people on here too who probably attract a particular kind of atheist. You know what I mean? And so their experience of atheists is primarily negative. They're people who just want to debate and have a go at them, and tell them they're stupid or whatever. And it's just not. I just don't believe that. I don't think that religious people are stupid. I don't think religious people are evil. I don't think religious people are worth any less respect or dignity than anyone else is. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that. Um,
I mean, at the end of the
and I
day,
know,
we're all wait, who gifted me? I'm like at 1K. Thank you for all the gifts. I should probably say that first.
you.
Second, um I should
That's a pretty
probably I want to
chill.
say pardon?
That's a pretty chill little $5 you've made there, man.
Yeah, I know. I was surprised. But also, yeah, everyone's just a victim of their circumstances. And it's really like, it feels
That's it.
weird because it's like, I feel like I'll find a lot of people who, because I'm on the left politically. I don't know if you like, I'd say I'm like center left. Um, but like, I'll like a lot of the idea of the left is like, hey, you should look at someone's circumstances before you judge them because a person is just their circumstances. And then I'll have all these lives where people will judge people for their circumstances. And I'm like, that's
Mm,
that's the opposite of what we're supposed to
yeah,
do.
that's a really good uh, summary, I think. A lot of the criticism leveled at just about anyone other than one's self is based on circumstances which influenced them becoming who they are and what they think and believe, which are entirely out of their control, right? Like, I mean, something that really kind of one of the earlier straws that contributed to breaking the camel's back for my religion when I was a kid anyway was just the notion that someone's religious affiliation is almost entirely predictable based on the geographic location of their birth. You know what I mean? Like, if you're born into a Hindu family, you're going to be raised a Hindu. You're going to be indoctrinated into Hinduism. This doesn't mean that
Yeah.
your parents, it doesn't mean that these Hindu parents are evil. It doesn't mean that these Hindu parents are even unintelligent. But this is just what people do. They teach their children to believe what they already believe. And
Yeah.
the same is going to happen
And
if you're
not out
born
of
into a
like
Christian family, an Islamic family. It's the same thing. And
yeah,
people
and it's not even
change,
out of
people
like
leave this
malice or
faith and adopt
stupidity or
that
anything
one.
like
But
that. Or yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah,
add
no,
that it's
that's
like it's not a
exactly.
people will be like, oh, it's because they're stupid. It's like it's not because they're stupid. It's because they're actually very rational. It's that they were taught this by their parents. They think their parents are good people and wouldn't teach them wrong. So of course they're gonna pass down that knowledge because why would my parents teach me something wrong? Like it comes from a reasonable place too.
Exactly.
Like none
Well,
of
it
it is
comes from a
dumb.
place of survival. Ultimately, like, I
Yeah,
mean, evolutionarily speaking, we trust our parents for survival. You know what I mean? And I think that this is what's so profound about what the earliest philosophers achieved in basically kind of discovering things like logical fallacy, right? Because if you can learn about logical fallacy, then you kind of inoculate yourself against your circumstances. Do you know what I mean? Like if you can understand how a logical fallacy works and why you should understand how to spot them, then no matter where it is that you're born, no matter what the environment is that you're exposed to, you're going to be able to, at least a little bit, start filtering out what's likely to be inaccurate. And you can be left with, you know, just the the much smaller amount of information that's likely to be useful. I think that, the earlier philosophers who kind of pioneered logic and oh, thank you for the little crown. So kawaii. If you can get if you can get those tools out there and put them in the hands of someone who is indoctrinated into something, or you could change their entire life. You could shift their entire worldview, if not in an instant, over time at least. You know what I mean? And I think that this is honestly going to be critical to bringing about the kind of future that we really should be trying to bring about is teaching people how to think more logically, so they don't just accept what it is that they're exposed to right off the bat.
it
You
really
know?
feels like there should be like in elementary school you should get like a logic class. Like just like a straight up just like
Yes,
here's what a
philosophy.
syllogism is.
Yeah,
Here's like basic symbolic logic. Here is like how you
absolutely.
like structure an argument. Here's because like one of the things that blows my mind, people don't know how to structure arguments. People don't even know how to structure essays.
No.
Like thesis,
Yes.
thesis, supporting paragraphs, conclusion, right? Like
Yes.
there's and your thesis outlines your supporting paragraphs. Like I don't know why I
I
went over it. Of
completely
course,
agree.
you probably know how to, but like they don't know, and I'm
No,
like,
no,
this
I
is a
completely agree.
vital skill to even just like communicate any idea, right?
Yes.
Like this is writing. This is just literacy.
No, I completely agree, and I think that the longer I spend in this kind of space, and the more people I talk to, um, I really do think that something like this, like a formal logic class, should be compulsory. You know what I mean? And I think that the fact that it's not yet been made compulsory is it potentially explains a lot. Oh, yeah, cowboy. Thank you, Brian. Friend of the channel, Brian
Yeehaw.
Soriselli. Uh, I really do think that the lack of formal logic in education underpins so many of the systemic and intergenerational problems that we're still trying to solve. I really do. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Man,
Honestly, I
I,
would have
I
just
could,
taught it in math
I've done it.
class because.
Like I said,
Oh,
man.
sorry. Do you need to go to
Yeah,
sleep?
I do. I honestly could keep going, man. I could just keep going. This is lovely. But I gotta go. I have to go.
Yeah, take care of your health. Go to sleep. Sleep tight. Have dreams.
Oh,
Unlike
another.
the eternal
Likewise.
perishment. Not perishment. What's the word I'm looking for? Eternal like nothingness that
Damnation,
hopefully
perhaps?
doesn't happen after you
Oh yeah.
die.
Yeah. Well, look, honestly, if I've gotten to a point where if that is what happens after I die, I'm actually kind of glad. I could do with a break. You know
Listen,
what I mean? Like,
maybe I'll feel that way later, but I'm young right now.
yeah.
Okay, I'm chilling.
That's not coming from a place of depression either. That's just coming from a place of like, man, sleeping and not dreaming feels good. But either way,
No,
I got to take off.
yeah,
Peace
my
and love,
late
man.
aunt, she
Truly, thank
was
you so much.
just the one last thing. I think you just might find this funny. My late aunt, she was religious, but she was like, God, I hope there's no heaven because I just want to sleep forever once this is over.
Yeah, man. I'm in the same boat as your great aunt, man. I'm I'm on the same page. Truly, please take care. Come back anytime. You're welcome here. It was a total pleasure.
Yeah, have a good one. Stay safe. Thank you for having me up, and it was a great conversation.
Nothing but love. All the best. Please take care. Thanks everyone. That was really cool. That was a great time, especially given that I haven't been on here for a while. I was kind of anticipating the usual barrage of just kind of angry, irrational, religious people yelling at me. But this was really nice. This was really nice. Um, to everyone who's been double tapping and helping us reach these numbers, thank you so much. It means a lot. This really doesn't work. This is not really a thing without you helping me make it a thing. Like me coming up here on the screen, it really is only half of the equation. You helping out is so much more important than me actually just kind of saying the things that I think. It really is a team effort. Thank you, Nils. Very kind of you, man. To all 150 people who are still in here, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. To anyone who's been gifting, can't tell you how thankful I am. Like I said, I'm gonna just try to feed any financial support back into this. Basically, like I said earlier, I'm trying to work on getting a bit of a better streaming rig together. So maybe I can get like a Twitch account going, get a bit of a desktop set up, maybe get a bit of a YouTube channel and start like responding to content, doing a bit more kind of like reaction and commentary kind of thing. That'd be awesome, I think. So any gifting or subscription money at all is just going to go towards that. Potential podcast stuff. Yeah, who knows? Who knows where that could end up. But I really do appreciate it. The reason that I want to do that is because I'm really grateful for the people who provided what I'm trying to provide now. Back when I was younger, like I really needed people doing this. It changed my life. You know what I mean? I wish people had have gotten to me earlier. I really do. I wish people had have gotten to me earlier. So if I can take any of the financial support that anyone gives me on here, through gifting or subscription and just pump it back into it, hopefully our reach will just grow. We'll get more eyes and ears on the screen, get more people in the conversation, at least more people out of the echo chamber that they're potentially in. And we can just over time, we can just positively affect history in a broad sense. And to anyone who's supported in any way up until this point, I'm incredibly grateful. Thank you so much. I really do mean it. I gotta go. I gotta call it. Thank you so much for your time. As I see no proof of any afterlife, uh, the time that you have here and now, I believe is the most valuable thing that any of us have. So for sharing some of that with us right now, I'm incredibly grateful. Please enjoy the rest of your day, your night, your week, your month, your year, your decade, your century, your millennium, whatever it is, however long it is that you've got left to just experience whatever this is. I just hope that you're just loving it as much as you can. Um, Peace and love. I'll give you the 10-second countdown. We'll see how many more likes we can get. But also, if anyone's not yet following, please follow. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to push for 10. I'll just be really stoked about getting 10. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just plugging myself here. I'd love to get to 10. We've gotten to, what are we at right now? We're at 8,579 followers in like 6 months. It's just crazy to me. I can hardly believe it. But you got 10 seconds left to follow, 10 seconds left to double tap if you feel like it. And then I got to go. But let's have a go. We're at 34. Let's go 35. All right, we're at 35. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 2, 1, 0. Excuse me. There you go. That's crazy, man. 1,500 likes in 10 seconds. Big love. Big love. Please take care. I'll see you next time as soon as possible. I mean it.